The problem is the government, and most in this room last night are also addicted to earmarks. These are the people that brought you 11,700 earmarks in this spending cycle. Like what? Airports were big this year, just not big airports. The two senators from Massachusetts got about $8 million in upgrades for the small airports near their vacation homes on Cape Cod and Nantucket. There's money for a museum run by a congressman's wife. There's money for a museum for a mule. There's money for a museum shuttered all but 2 days a year.
President Bush has decided to wield a new axe in the battle against earmarks, telling government officials not to disperse any money for earmarks that lawmakers did not see and did not approve.
Bush would be saying to his appointees, and by extension the appointees of the next administration, you are not required, in fact you're not going to enforce the wish list that's put on in these committee reports.
The president's making a step in the right direction of trying to eliminate as many of these wasteful earmarks as possible.
Earmarks are directions on how to spend money appropriated by Congress, but analysts say as many as 95% are inserted after Congress has voted and never seen by most lawmakers.
They're just literally hundreds, if not thousands, of special local projects, special interest group payoffs in some cases. It's really gotten to the point where it's perverted the whole purpose of Congress.
The president called on Congress in last year's State of the Union to cut in half the number of earmarks, but since then, many analysts say, it's only gotten worse.
They enacted 5,000 more earmarks than Bush was willing to tolerate, and they spent a whole lot more money on these things. And now he's saying, sort of, pretty please, will you try and listen to me this year?
But this time, he plans to get tougher, telling government officials not to spend any such money. The only snag is that he will issue the directions in an executive order, which the next president can disregard, which may be why Democratic leaders today seem to dismiss the entire effort.
He's going to focus on earmarks, which shows how hard up he is for something to talk about.
In his final State of the Union address, he's not talking about the promise of the future. He's talking about the process of an appropriations bill. I think that's pretty sad.
Even though the next president, whoever it may be, could override President Bush's executive order, it would put the issue of earmarks front and center again and perhaps put a new president on the spot.
What it can do is set the tone and the temper of the discussion at the presidential level for the next president. Will the next president stick with this executive order? Will this next president try to impose a flat moratorium?
Whatever the solution, says Senator DeMint, everyone has to do it together or it won't work.
So no one wants to be up here not asking for money for their state when some other senator's taking home billions to their state, and people back home feel like they're being cheated.
That's why House Republicans are calling for a complete moratorium, not just reductions. Almost everyone refers to the earmark process as an addiction, and breaking it, many say, will require everyone to hold hands and do it together. So think of President Bush's plan as an intervention aimed at giving lawmakers the will to go cold turkey.
The people's trust in their government is undermined by congressional earmarks. Special interest projects that are often snuck in at the last minute without discussion or debate. Last year, I asked you to voluntarily cut the number and cost of earmarks in half. I also asked you to stop slipping earmarks into committee reports that never even come to a vote. Unfortunately, neither goal was met. So this time, if you send me an appropriations bill that does not cut the number and cost of earmarks in half, I'll send it back to you with my veto. And tomorrow I will issue an executive order that directs federal agencies to ignore any future earmark that is not voted on by Congress. If these items are truly worth funding, Congress should debate them in the open and hold a public vote.
I've also said that if I get spending bills which in discretionary accounts raise our spending by more than inflation less 1%, I'll veto them. And I believe the President's executive order specifically saying, don't spend these earmark accounts. If they haven't been voted on by Congress, don't spend the money. That makes a lot of sense to me. It's a policy I'd maintain going forward. We're going to have to rein in these earmarks, rein in the pork barrel spending. I think that's essential.
And I'm very glad the President did it, and I'm glad that he's going to exercise his veto pen if they try to get around it. But this is, I mean, it's an outrageous practice. I mean, like the President said, no one ever sees it. They never vote on it. It's just stuffed in there by frankly, those who make their careers out of pork barreling and earmark projects. And it's got to stop. The American people want it stopped, and because of it, we Republicans lost the 2006 election.
Well, I think it was a very important reform that the President proposed, and it comes on top of the reforms that House Republicans adopted just this past weekend and have challenged the Democrats to join us in adopting those same reforms. A moratorium on earmarks until this select committee can come together and give guidance on a higher set of standards. You know, people have the sense out there that Washington is broken, and one of the fundamental reasons why they see Washington as being broken is this abuse of earmarks.
That's not all there is to holding down spending. The President mentioned earmarks. There are too many earmarks. They're not as transparent as they ought to be.
And of all the segments that we tested in the entire State of the Union address, nothing did better than ending wasteful Washington spending. The yellow line of Republicans, the blue line of the Democrats. Watch what happens when the President talks about balancing the budget. Let's take a look.
We need to earn their trust by spending their tax dollars wisely. Next week, I'll send you a budget that terminates or substantially reduces 151 wasteful or bloated programs totaling more than $18 billion. The budget that I will submit will keep America on track for a surplus in 2012. American families have to balance their budgets, so should their government.
Absolutely off the charts. Why was that such a positive reaction? James. I mean, you guys gave it a home run. Tell me.
It's our
why?
Money. It's our money. They're spending our money on useless projects or whatever, and without our permission.
And running a family is a very difficult thing to do, and maintaining that budget, and I hold our government responsible for the same thing.
If the government controls our money, it controls us.
What about the politics of this? Is this good politics for the President to be taking this stance on earmarks?
Well, yeah. Brett, look, all you have to do is ask one question. Have you ever heard of the bridge to nowhere? Everybody in America has heard of the bridge to nowhere, and that was an earmark about a bridge to nowhere in Alaska.
By Republicans.
And by Republicans. Right. And did Republicans suffer because of that in the 2006 election? They certainly did. That was the core of their overspending problem that irritated so many conservatives and independents in particular that turned against the party. So.
President Bush, meanwhile, has signed that executive order he promised, directing federal agencies to disregard spending on pet projects, earmarks, that lawmakers identify in reports but do not include in the actual spending bills that are voted on.
And this executive order says that any such earmarks this year and into the future will be ignored by this administration and hopefully future administrations unless those spending projects were voted on by the Congress.
The President also reiterated he will veto any appropriations bill that does not cut the number and the amount of earmarks in half.